Hi, my name is Raleigh Carter, and for the past 7 years, I've been working on developing a gymnastics business model that is both self-sustainable and automatically drives growth. Now, in these videos, I have nothing to sell you because I cannot really work with somebody who doesn't understand my process and hasn't gotten results from my process. And so my goal with these videos is to provide as much value to the gymnastics business owner and coaches for free. This is the first video that I'm doing. It's one of many. I look forward to doing more, but let's just dive in on this one. We're going to talk about the number one problem in gymnastics, essentially, and with your business. So the number one problem in gymnastics, and in your business specifically, or if you're a coach, in your situation with your class, or your group, or your program, is going to be skill acquisition. Skill acquisition is the number one problem. Why? Because skill acquisition is automatically, inherently built into the sport of gymnastics. You're not getting away from it. And I want to just simplify the thought here so we can both get on the same page. There's a presupposed idea, almost a promise, that when you go into a restaurant, they're going to serve you food. You look at a menu, you order it. You don't think that you're going to get some plastic meal that's fake food. You're expecting it to be real food. And so that means that the restaurant, okay, has this inherent promise built into it that whatever you order is actually going to be real food that is edible. And so that is the same problem with gymnastics. In gymnastics, there's an inherent promise to your customers or your clients, your athletes, that you're going to help them acquire skills, okay? So skill acquisition is the number one problem because that is the inherent promise that is just built into the whole entire story. And so we need to start there with the whole entire conversation. Skill acquisition, everything is going to funnel up into that problem, and everything is trying to support and solve a skill acquisition problem. Now, time dictates the path that you're going to go on in this skill acquisition journey. So if I try to acquire skills too fast, okay, the athlete or student is going to suffer. There's going to be breakdown happening physically, mentally, or emotionally. If I try to acquire skills too slow, then the athlete is going to sour, right? They're going to not be content. They're not going to be happy about the process. They're going to give up. They're going to lose hope. You're learning skills too slowly. So the goal is to learn skills just right around the same pace of their body development physically, their emotional development, their mental development. And so you have to acquire skills fast enough to keep the athlete engaged, but not so fast that it becomes a detriment to the athlete's growth. So that time is going to dictate that path. So you show up, if you're a competitive coach or you've worked with athletes over long periods of time, all of a sudden an injury shows up and you're just like, surprise, something's happening. My heel hurts, my wrist hurts, I'm feeling lower back pain, whatever it might be. It's like, surprise, where'd this come from? Well, time dictated that path. You started a skill acquisition journey, and over time, it basically compounded into the injury or the suffering that the athlete is experiencing. And so you were already on a path, whether you knew it or not. Time plus the speed of skill acquisition forced you in a direction based off of the capacity of the individual. And everybody's capacity is at a different starting point. And so that's what makes this sport of gymnastics so individualized and personal. Okay, so let's move on. Optimization, opportunity, outcome. We need to optimize opportunity for outcome. So this layer of information is where you are dealing with disgruntled customers or clients, or disgruntled athletes. Because the question you have to ask yourself is, do you know how to optimize opportunity for outcome? If you're not intentionally optimizing opportunity for outcome, then the disgruntledness that shows up has merit, it has weight, because you cannot rationalize or reason with it, okay? So here's the process towards outcome. It's either by happenstance, well, it just showed up, I guess you got that skill. I don't know how you got the skill, we just did it 100 times and I guess you're gonna get it. So it happened by happenstance, or you take a stance and then that happens to lead to the outcome, okay? So an unreasonable path, okay, an unreasonable outcome is basically going, I don't know how it happened, but it did, and we're just going to take that as a win. Okay, that's unreasonable because you cannot explain how they got there other than just kind of guessing like, well, you know, it just takes 100 tries before you learn a skill. That's unreasonable. And so if you're dealing with a customer who seems unreasonable, It might be because your process is also unreasonable. However, if you take a stance that happens to lead to the outcome, it's the stance that is now reasonable. You can literally say, I am not going to change the way we do things because of X, Y, and Z. Because this is how we optimize the opportunity for outcome. No, you're not allowed to come in on your other days that you're not signed up for to learn because you chose not to show up on the current days you're scheduled for. This would be like a competitive team problem. Okay, you have athletes who are scheduled to show up 4 to 5 days a week, and they decide not to, and then they call and they're like, hey, we missed a day. Do you think we could just come in on a Wednesday and just do some like extra additional practice because we didn't come in? It's like, well, you chose not to show up, okay? We're building a business that optimizes the opportunity outcome. So I set out a schedule, I made the days, you've already been showing up to those days, the opportunity is there, we've optimized the opportunity, we've given you the space, the equipment, the coaching, the personnel, we're optimizing the opportunity, and by optimizing that opportunity, if you show up, you will be going towards that outcome. However, you chose not to show up. So now, your disgruntledness is really your problem, okay? And so now you can talk about how you're optimizing the opportunity, and then they come off as being unreasonable, okay? Because they just want to show up through happenstance, essentially, and hope that it's going to work, and it's like it doesn't happen that way. You might get lucky, but that's not a way to build a foundation. They need to take a stance. You, the customer, need to take a stance. These are the days you're supposed to show up. This is what's expected of you. You, the customer, need to take a stance that happens to lead to your outcome, okay? Don't show up and be in a happenstance mindset, essentially. And then we, the business, are going to take a stance. And we're going to say, no, we do not bend these rules, because by bending these rules, we're no longer optimizing our opportunity. We're creating chaos. So that's the problem. So that's a little bit of process towards your outcome information. Okay, the 5 C's. So the 5 C's: company, content, coaches, clients, culture. The 5 C's basically are the categories of information, the areas of the entire whole that need to be working together in the business model to be in coordination with one another to really optimize the opportunity for outcome. So your company, which really is the facility, the equipment, every aspect, the personnel, the process, the systems you have in place, all the components and pieces, all of it needs to be intentionally put together in a way that optimizes the opportunity of outcome, okay? Your content, which is your curriculum, what are you going to be teaching the students, the progressionary steps, the lesson plans, the training plans, the periodization, okay? How is that optimizing the opportunity of outcome? You see where this is going, okay? Coaches, how well are your coaches trained? Do you have a training plan built for the coaches so that they develop and have personal development and master the sport of gymnastics? Because if a coach is learning at the same rate the athlete is, I experienced this from being a self-taught coach, is as I'm teaching the athlete a new skill, they elevate beyond my education. And then I have to learn as I go, and I'm always behind the curve. And so if you're not providing a way for the coaches to stay ahead of their athletes' development, then you're always going to be behind the curve. So how do you optimize the opportunity for outcome? Well, you need to optimize, which means the coaches need to be ahead of the curve. They need to have more foresight because hindsight's 20/20. So if the coaches can look back into the past, if they're so far ahead in the journey, they can look back, they can start seeing where that athlete's going to show up, and they can start changing and adjusting where the athlete is today, because the coach can stick their head a month into the future and be like, okay, in a month, if we keep on this course, I know what's going to happen. So we need to change course, okay? And a simple example of that would be, let's say you're on beam, and the athlete's learning a back handspring on beam. Okay, back handspring on beam, you're throwing it, the athlete's throwing it with sloppy quality, poor technique, whatever it is. If they are performing at a low efficiency rate, they're likely to receive some form of overuse injury. So now their wrists are hurting. Okay, let's just say the wrists are hurting because they're collapsing on their hands, and their hands are taking the brunt of the impact, and their wrists are just getting jammed. So now their wrists are going to start hurting. So you look at the athlete and you go, okay, if you do the necessary numbers to achieve the back handspring on a high beam at a competitive level, if you do those numbers with that technique and that form, we're going to run into an injury problem. Yes, you might get the back handspring on a high beam, but now you're wearing, taping your wrist or wearing tiger paws or whatever it might be to protect your wrists because you're just messing them up on the beam. So you need to change something. You look into the future, you go, if we did that many, the numbers necessary over the course of a month, then we're just going to run into problems. So you need to change something. You take the athlete off the beam, off the hard surface, and you start building the technique on a softer surface so that they can throw it with their current situation of quality, and then they can improve upon it on a surface that is not going to be detrimental to the wrists, essentially. And then as they build their quality and execution, their technique, then you can transfer them back over to a harder surface because you understand the detriment of that timeline. And so that is what a coach needs to understand. Clients. Okay, so you have a customer, and how many coaches and business owners out there, complain about their customers and wish that their customers were more reasonable? Well, in part of the 5 C's of coordinating the customers is you need to have your clear expectations set for the customer. You need to be very clear on what the customer journey is going to look like, and you need to be able to provide predictability for the customer so that they have a way to measure success. If the customer cannot measure success appropriately, or at least on your terms, they're going to start measuring success based off of other people's terms or their own made up of terms, which is basically an assumption. So example of that would be customer shows up, you're sitting there going, I can't wait to sign somebody up, I need some money. So they showed up, you take their credit card, you're like, bam, you're in a class. And that's about all that's been discussed. Maybe you give them a free t-shirt or something like that. Here's the day to show up. Child shows up, now they're in the class. A month goes on, 2 months goes on, 3 months goes on, you've forgotten about that customer essentially. Yeah, you see them, but they're not at the forefront of your mind. And the child's in the class and you're happy, they've been going for 3 months. And then you get an email or a phone call that says, when is my child going to move up? Okay, well that's a valid question. When is my child going to move up? Did that expectation get set at the very beginning when they signed up? The when. Not how. Your child will move up when they learn these skills. Not how, when, okay? Because the how question does not answer the very big problem up here, skill acquisitions, okay? The promise, you will learn a new skill. It does not answer that. How, okay? How you will learn a new skill does not promise or answer when you will learn a new skill. And you're getting clients for the when, not the how. They're showing up not going, okay, I know you're going to teach me this skill, but you're going to do it over what, the course of a year? Sure, I'll pay you money for that. It's like, no, I'm not. They want it in a specific timeline. That timeline is not communicated. At least I haven't heard a lot of people talk about the timeline or predict it because it's really hard to predict, especially if you don't know what the starting point is and you don't know the student's ability to learn and at what rate they can learn. It's really hard to predict. It says, well, in 2 months, they will learn their first skill. And then in another 2 months, they'll learn their second skill. And in another 2 months, they'll learn their third skill. But imagine if you could deliver that promise. Okay, so now you say, okay, the student is going to learn their first skill in 2 months. 2 months shows up and the student hasn't learned their skill. Now we have a question. Is it our fault that the student's not learning the skill, or is it the student's fault? Well, at least you have a reason to have a conversation. And then say the parent shows up and they say, oh, my student hasn't learned that skill like you promised they're going to learn in 2 months. Well, now you have a reason to track student data. And you can say, well, your student fails to participate in the activity. Okay, well, are you going to call the parent up at the end of 2 months and say, hey, your student fails to participate in the activity because they don't like bars, let's say, it hurts their tummy. And you're like, okay, they're failing to participate. Are you going to say that at the end of 2 months? Or are you going to say that the moment you notice the student is failing to participate? Because now it costs you something. So by taking a stance, you're now creating a sense of urgency for your own business and your own employees and your whole company by saying, okay, you're going to get this skill by this timeline, and if we don't hit this timeline, you have a right to be upset with us. However, what you're going to now do for yourself by creating that is you're going to now, when the student shows up to class the first time, you're going to be observing going, okay, what are they struggling with and how slow are they going to learn the first skill they need to learn? And then you're going to look at that skill and you're going to be like, oh, this is going to take a little while. Boom, you're calling that parent up and saying, look, it appears that your son or daughter is struggling with working on bars. They're just scared of bars, or they don't feel strong or successful, or it hurts their hands. Here's some solutions. Here's some solutions that I can give you to help so that your student will reach the outcome. Now it's proactive instead of reactive. Okay, so now you're saying, okay, well, you know what, if you go to the park and you played on the bars and you asked them to hang on the bars and you had them try to hold support on the bars, then it'd get them more comfortable with bars and now they wouldn't hate it as much. And then when they come into the gym, we could actually apply the information we're trying to, we could actually teach them. Boom, now you're working together towards the end goal. So now when the student doesn't reach the goal after 2 months and the parent's like, hey, my student didn't reach the goal, well, you have an understanding why. And it doesn't just fall on you and it's not just like magical, like, I don't know why it didn't happen. I mean, everyone else figured it out, okay? So I went a little bit longer on that one, but that's the client situation. Culture. You need all of this working together for the culture, okay? Culture is not, I have core values, I have a mission statement, a vision statement. Culture is not, I have integrity. Culture is how it all works together, okay? Culture is the predictability of it. Culture is not some days I'm kind and some days I'm not kind. Culture is like tradition. You show up and you shake people's hands when you introduce yourself. Culture is how you eat, it's how you sleep, it's how you dress. And so there's more components to culture than just like, hey, we have some values. We all clap and celebrate when someone does something well. It's like, well, that doesn't answer all the questions. Because what happens when someone doesn't do something well? Do we just not applaud their effort either? So now we just ignore them? Okay, well, how's that going to have a cultural impact over time? So the nuance with culture is everybody has to be actively engaged in the process. I'm taking more. I started off with thinking, okay, be intentional with culture, build your culture with intention, and everyone's going to fall in line. But the truth is some businesses out there are not able to hire people that align with their culture. Now, there's a conversation that will say, well, then don't hire that person. That's not always practical for everybody, okay? So culture, in a way, I feel like culture is more about identifying your current culture and then asking the question, what can I influence? And influence needs to be held accountable. So you have a current culture in your current state. You can't just go fire everybody, or you can't just, kick everybody off your competitive team. So you have a current culture, and you may like it or not like it. There might be aspects of it you love and aspects of it you hate, okay? So you identify your culture and identify how your interactions are driving effort, because that's really all we care about with the culture. We care about how the effort is moving forwards. And so when you go and look at your culture and then you see how your culture is driving effort, then you can start saying, how do I want to tweak my culture so that I can get a different type of result with effort? And so then you just kind of piece by piece kind of chip away at it. And it's a lot easier to shift culture when you can get everybody on board. It's a lot harder to shift culture when you just say, this is a good idea, and everyone else is like, I don't really care about that idea. It's not important to me. So part of culture is getting everybody on board to also agree it's a good idea. So part of shifting culture is not just you come up with the idea and then try to sell it to everyone. Shifting culture can easily be asking everybody what they're disgruntled in, or excuse me, or what they don't like, or what they wish changed, or how they think that they could improve upon the current outcome. Getting that feedback and finding what everyone agrees on. And then saying, we all agree on this. So that means if everybody agrees on it, they're more likely to hold each other accountable to it. And once everybody goes, oh, we all agree on this, that's cool. That's where your cultural shift comes in. So you're going to start with culture no matter what. Sometimes you're going to have to bring people into your culture and they don't mix, they're not a good fit, they don't mix with your culture, and they will leave. That's fine. You're trying to take the culture that you have, kind of like clay, and hone it in and shape it and mold it into something prettier and prettier and prettier over time that starts to look like and appear like what you really want your brand and your business to be representation of. So that would be culture, but all of them have to be in coordination with one another, okay? So 5 C's, but really coordination could be like the 6th C. It all comes down to what problem am I trying to solve and how am I going to build this foundation that I can confidently stand on. And so just quick summary before we get to this last point, okay? So you got this number one problem, it's skill acquisition. Customer comes in, they believe there's this inherent promise that you're going to teach their student or them a new skill. That's just why they're paying money. They're not paying for babysitting. Okay, so you got a skill acquisition problem. If you teach the skills too quickly to somebody, they're likely to suffer a detriment, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. But you increase the level of risk by teaching too many skills too quickly. If you teach the skills too slow, the student's emotionally going to sour essentially. They'll be like, I don't like coming to class, I don't learn anything, I'm bored, you're too slow. So you've got to find the right pacing for the student. It's tricky, but that's what you need to aim for because they're coming in with the promise of skill acquisition. So just the right speed. Now, in order to do that, you need to be able to optimize the opportunity for outcome. You're presenting an opportunity to acquire skills, and you need to optimize that opportunity so that you can deliver on the promise. So in order to optimize the opportunity for outcome, you have to decide, are you going to make things happen based off of happenstance? It's just like, it just kind of sort of happened because of happenstance. I guess all the pieces kind of fell together. It's nice when it works. It's terrible when it doesn't. Or are you going to actually take a stance that happens to produce the outcome? And so by taking the stance, now you're optimizing opportunity by taking a stance, okay? This is how we're going to do it. And you stand on that. Now you're building your foundation for how you're going to deliver that promise, okay? And then you're going to coordinate the 5 C's and make sure that they're all working together towards the same goal. So you're going to optimize everything, making sure that it's all optimized and coordinated and working together for the same goal, which is to deliver on the promise of skill acquisition. And in order to do that, okay, you need to pursue participation in preparation for progress. You got a lot of letter P's in there, okay? We're pursuing the participation in preparation for progress. If a student is not participating, then how can they prepare for progress? They can't. And so everything has to be built around the idea of getting students to participate. They have to participate in order to prepare for their progress. If they do not participate, they cannot progress. So when it comes back to skill acquisition and the number one problem, which being a customer comes in with the idea that you're promising they're going to learn a new skill, and yet they fail to participate, they do not pursue participation, then you cannot deliver on the progress. And now you have a rational idea to stand on. I would love to deliver on the promise, however, you have failed to participate. Because you failed to participate, we are not preparing ourselves for the progress necessary. I cannot get your core stronger if you do not actually do the core exercises. I cannot help you flip if you do not actually flip. So I need to spot you. I need to put you in a belt or a harness, or we need to do drills. But if you are too scared to flip upside down, and then you're going home saying, I'm not getting better at backflips, it's like, well, you're not participating. And so how many problems can get boiled down to the participation issue? The nice thing is this is in your favor as a business owner, because participation is not just a physical activity, it's a mental and emotional. And so participation you can also really dive deeper in the conversation. There's a parent that's disgruntled. Let's take a competitive example. Okay, so parents disgruntled. Their daughter is not moving up in level for the competition season. This is how we would solve this problem. Okay, I want my daughter to be a level 6, but she's a level 5. All right, well, I have 3 areas that I can bring to the table that talk about how the daughter has failed to participate. Okay, I can say, 1, your daughter has physically failed to participate. And what that would mean is she's not conditioned her body to get ready for the skills necessary to move on to the next level. So she's failed to participate in conditioning appropriately, physically. She's not engaged herself physically at the rate she needs to. Okay, this could mean that she just put in 75% effort instead of 100% effort, but I can't control that effort. So she has to control the effort. Okay, so there's a physical side. There's also a mental side. I could say, your daughter physically is doing awesome, but mentally, she fails to think about the things she needs to think about in order to see progress. She's not participating mentally. She's distracted. She's having conversations on the side. She's not taking her quality seriously. She's not trying to actually understand my corrections. I tell her the correction, I show her all the processes, and then she forgets it tomorrow. She doesn't take it serious enough mentally to participate with the process. And so, okay, so we have a mental participation, and then we have an emotional participation, which is, okay, so your daughter's physically strong, she's mentally engaged, but she's got an emotional element that she's just not ready emotionally for the next level. There's the consequences, the risk is too high that if she is not emotionally engaged for that level, there's going to be a detriment to her in that season. It's a risk that increases. And if that risk increases and there's a detriment to her in that season because she's not emotionally ready, then how is that going to affect her in the future? how is that going to affect the next level? And so we need her to become more emotionally prepared. Okay, so now I can actually have an athlete who has all the skills for the next level, but let's just say they're like 8.5 quality, 8.7 quality, and I can give a valid reason and response to why they're not ready for the next level. Yeah, they got all the skills, but they're not mentally engaged enough for those skills to then progress in the next level. They're not emotionally engaged enough for those skills to actually progress over time. And so, yes, they have all the skills, but that's at an 8.5, 8.7 quality, and what's going to happen is those skills are going to plateau due to the lack of participation mentally and emotionally. And so now I can build a reasonable response because I'm taking a stance, okay? And if I've built everything correctly, the parent can get behind my 5 C's. They can see that I'm optimizing the opportunity for outcome by coordinating the 5 C's. And so they're going to hear me and go, okay, I can see how you're doing that. You are providing mental training. You are providing emotional training. You are providing physical training. So yes, my daughter might be physically close, but I can trust that you're going to work on her mental and emotional development as well as components. And when all 3 are working together, her skills will even elevate faster. And so now there's a trust because I'm taking a stance. They can see how I've optimized the opportunity. They see that I've coordinated everything. Okay? They see that I'm working at just the right speed. We're not going to go chase fast because your child will suffer. And don't worry, we're not chasing slow. She's not too far behind. And if she doesn't move up this year, it's better that she gets all her skills in a safe way. So the longevity of the sport is at the just right. We want to go for the longevity of the sport. You don't want her to quit by the time she's 16 or 17, right? You want her to go all the way through college. That's what I thought. So we need to work at just the right pace, right? Not that you can guarantee anyone's going to college, but that's where the conversation seems to sometimes go. So, and then that's the timeline. So let's not push the timeline. And then really it's a lack of trust in skill acquisition. I see that you don't trust that I'm going to be able to help your daughter acquire the necessary skills to reach the outcome that you have inside your mind or that your daughter has inside her mind. And yet here I've built the entire reason why you can trust me. So if you don't trust me after all of these points, then maybe we're not the right fit and we shouldn't work together because I'm not going to change any of this information. I'm going to be working and filtering all of my whole entire process and training through this information right here. So I think that about covers it for the first video. I hope you enjoyed it. Love to hear what your thoughts or comments are. And I'd love to hear about how you may have applied this information to your current situation because maybe you knew all this information. Maybe there's nothing new here to you, but I'm pretty excited about it. And I look forward to making the next videos. You guys all have a good one. Bye.